Hello, Leah.
Hello there. Hello, Liz.
It's lovely to have you in the room with us. And just for information, we already have the webinar that you so kindly delivered for Turning the Tide that is available on the web. And now we're here to tease out some of the issues that you laid out for us a little further in this keynote speech. Um, where you left us, I think, was that tackling individual issues like climate change in isolation is not a useful approach. You introduced us to a more holistic approach, which you call cultural planning, and you were very keen on emphasising the role of governance structures
Yeah.
in delivery of tackling climate change and placemaking and communities
Yes.
generally, having flourishing communities. So as you know, Turning the Tide is a five-partner project where we're looking particularly at the role of artists in combating narratives around climate change. We're taking socially engaged practice as our benchmark, and we are incorporating cultural planning into our deliberations, particularly cultural mapping. Cultural mapping is going to be a key component of our whole project. So can you start to tease out a bit further for us, Leah? Why is cultural planning? Why is cultural mapping? Why are these things so important?
Yeah. Yes. Um, I guess there's various components in the answer I may give. The components are this. As you know, I've been working with cultural mapping and planning for about 30 years now. When we started in the UK, for example, it was an age of optimism, the early 90s, really. Age of optimism, things were beginning to change in the country, etc. Now, we are in an age of, I would call it turbulence, if not chaos, with many divisions in society. And working as I do as an urbanist, as a cultural urbanist and cultural planning, I see cities, large and small, persistently, consistently. I see civic leaders consistently still addressing issues of isolated communities, not so much of deprivation, but sheer poverty of expectations, as well as social poverty and social divisions, etc. I see them still addressing these questions with the old methods of welfare, in a way, welfare. Welfare which does not reach out to the specific needs of a community. There are often measures that I thought up in a policy, in an office, far away from the communities that they are destined to support in a way. So the first point for me in terms of reviving or beginning again to talk about cultural planning, as I understand cultural planning, not just as the planning of cultural events and cultural infrastructure, but really as the kind of deep, holistic way of getting into the way communities live, work, network, live together, going deeply into the specificities of the patterns of living in a community, getting deeper into the ways and the fears and the expectations of that community. This to me is cultural planning. And to me, what we need more and more is, if you will, strategies that help us to get to know our communities better, And one way of doing this, one key tool in this toolbox that is cultural planning, is cultural mapping. And cultural mapping, I can see it and I use it often together in collaboration with, in cooperation with artists, creatives, architects as well, designers, urban designers, but above all, artists. Now, we can ask the question, why artists, etc.
That was what I was going to ask you. Why artists? What is it that artists bring that is different, that is... Yeah.
In my experience, if you have artists working in a community, first of all, they have a different perspective than mine to begin with. If I am tasked with troubleshooting a particular issue in a community, that could be a center that doesn't work, or if a colleague of mine I'm working with, and we are asked to do a regeneration of a town center, then we go in with a mindset. I am an urban sociologist, I study cultural arts, etc. I worked in planning as well. So I have a little bit more of a holistic approach to placemaking. But artists, when they come into the place, they pick up what I cannot pick up often. They pick up the intangibles of a place. They pick up the vibes of a place to begin with. And their capacity of observation is immense. It's like a 360-degree thing. So you land an artist in a place. It's not that they come from Mars. Often the artists we have worked with, and you are aware, Liz, of the artists we have worked with, they often come from the community, if not from the city and the neighborhood, etc. So they know the locations, they know the place, etc. But it's their ability to see the community and to use tools that animate the community, put the community together, moderate, kind of look at the community from a human perspective. And they can pick up this human element in the community and make something out of it, work on it, so that the whole community in a way participates better to the change proposed, or they're better able to express their views about a certain change that is going to happen in that community. But also more recently, I have come across many projects where artists come in specifically as connectors, as healers of divisions in a community, as helping communities really to understand where the dividing lines are, why they are there, making sense of the history also of a community together. So it's not just listening, but the artists are able to mobilize the narrative, the stories, the memories that are in a community. And I think that's a fundamental process in helping communities to cope with change.
Yes, and it's much easier to engage with multi-layered deep issues through creativity than it is through just talking. And yeah.
Yes, or just saying, look, we have a little bit of budget. Let me consult you on that particular bench or that particular piece of a square. Would you like a garden or not? You know, if you want a garden, what kind of plants should we have? That's the kind of traditional, if you will, type of, having the community concerned about change. No, what we have with cultural mapping and cultural planning is the artist as mediator, the artist as not the storyteller themselves, but the kind of story writer with the community. So it's like the community rediscovering who they are, and especially the community rediscovering that they are working for their common good. Because the values I was saying earlier in society until now, they have been, competition, leave other people behind, the people who cannot participate in society or are not productive enough, just leave them behind. The important thing is the winners, the entitled people, those that will really make the change, are those that are capable of producing, participating in society, etc. So
and that applies equally to climate change issues as it does to anything else.
To anything else.
People the least powerful are the ones left behind. Yeah,
they are left behind. I mean, during COVID, we have seen what happened to the people who had to go into hospitals and work into hospitals. They were those that died, really, because they were unprotected. And also, but for many logistical issues as well, they were left behind. And in a way, with this kind of, I call it cultural planning 3.0, is mainstreaming the activity, the creativity that the artists can draw out of the community, can help the community really to come out, really, to draw out. And that kind of creativity gives agency to communities. They give agencies to communities to make the most of their resources. Because it's not always the case that we need a lot of new building, a lot of new resources. It might just be that we need to learn how to use better the resources that we have. But it's only a question of who decides that. And with cultural planning and the engagement of the community through creative work, artwork, etc., there is the confidence in the community that they can make the change. They can pinpoint the locations, the places where help is needed. They can then decide on what should happen in a certain place, or what should happen to a certain building.
That's great. In Turning the Tide, we are taking three different approaches, I suppose. We've got, we're engaging with locally based artists who are embedded in the communities, who are taking a longitudinal approach. We're involving them and we're calling them local urban labs at 3 months at a time. We're encouraging the artists to both share what they've already been doing and create new work. And then we've got visiting artists, so that each of our cities is hosting artists from other cities, so that brings a new perspective.
Fantastic.
And in advance of those artists arriving, we've got Deer Hunter, who are spending time in the city, in the neighbourhood of the city, to really cultural map and then hand that as a gift to the arriving artists. So we're trying to do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think what you're doing, which is really fascinating, it will be an interesting experiment to observe as well in longitudinal terms. It's like you are adding to the kind of local engagement of artists that know the community. You are adding the new element of those artists that come from outside and may bring a new perspective to the table, and may be able to bring also new stakeholders at local level, and then maybe saying, oh, why haven't you involved this particular people or not? And then the mapping layer onto that, the mapping will be able to pinpoint exactly what is going on already on the ground. Because sometimes we forget that there are initiatives, there are things going on the ground, which need to be valued, which need to be brought to the table. Because in a long-term process, you may want to add value to that. If you already have, I don't know, a creative healing process, a reading project, a music listening, a dance project for the community that is already going on a micro level, that micro level there could be increased by adding other stakeholders that may join in and expand that and add value to that, and may bring it to a different venue or may mainstream it even at a neighborhood or city level.
Great. I just want to finish with teasing out what you were implying about governance and how important governance structures are in the process. And certainly, I mean, what we're noticing is that, yes, we can do all this wonderful work, but if the landowners and developers are not interested, it's falling on stony ground, if you like. If the local authorities aren't involved in the process, then so can you tell us a wee bit about what you were meaning about governance being important?
Yes, no, I just meant just to point out that we need to be smart, and the artists can help us also, perhaps in devising new techniques of democratic participation, but active democratic participation, in a way that decision making on, say, participatory budgeting, for example, that it can aid it can give more voice to the community in saying, okay, we can have 3 participatory budgeting projects, and the artists and the community representative can go to the right department and just lobby for that. But the artists also can help us to have this holistic view and saying, look, it's not just that we need these 3 projects in there. It's not just the planning department that should be involved. It's also the schools. It's also, let's do projects also in schools and education, or with the local library, or with the local museum. So bits and pieces of budget can come from different sources. So it's this connective element that I can see it's important. It starts off with the artist connecting with the community expressing their needs, becoming active agents, and then the communities themselves gaining an overview of what is needed in there, and maybe setting up community land trusts, for example, if necessary, as well as working hard on participatory budgeting or on other forms of democratic participation. Because, you know, if the communities don't demand this, and they have to be confident enough to demand that, that's why I'm saying, once the artists have done their work with the community is empowered and active, then they can go and demand specific forms of participation to the kind of civic leaders or those in power.
Yeah, and as you hinted, community land trusts ownership is vitally important.
It's vitally important.
Lia, we're out of time in terms of our presentation. Thank you so much for that. You have opened all sorts of questions for us to debate further. And let's do that now. Thank you, Lia Ghilardi.
Okay, thank you.